Welcome card making friends to this episode of Use What You Have, Repetition Edition. Let's get started. I'm using the Sweary Affirmations Sentiment Stamp by Darkroom Door. Now, while I personally am not a very sweary person, sometimes aggressive encouragement is what's needed. The F-bombs in this stamp are somewhat censored, but if it's not for you, I understand. I would send this to select people, but I guarantee none of them would send a card like this to me. This card came about when I was trying to explain what Easy Mount is to my daughter, who had popped into my office and was somewhat confused by the huge roll of cling foam I recently acquired. You see, I plan on converting all my wood block stamps to cling stamps, which will save space and, more importantly, make them usable in my Misty stamping tool. Now, speaking of the Misty stamping tool, I finally added an original size Misty to my toolbox after using only a mini for many years, and it turned out to be perfect for this long sentiment strip stamp. It's the first time I actually pulled it out of the box and used it. Gotta say, I really like the new design. In order to demonstrate cling foam to my daughter, I grabbed the nearest cling stamp I had, which was Sweary Affirmations by Darkroom Door. Now you can see that I've been inking it up with a dark brown ink pad and then double stamping for a crisp dark image. The plan is to stamp in the middle of the card panel, then move it to the left, as well as shifting the stamp up for some variety in the way the sentiments are placed, then repeat on the right, but shift the stamp down. Sure, the sentiments are in straight lines, but it does give it more of a random effect than stamping them so the words are at the same level left to right. As I was working with this stamp, I realized that I've had this stamp since it was released in 2022 and it had never been inked. That reminded me of a very fun memory of the late great Rachel Grigg. In our Oz Swap Till You Drop days, a bunch of us took a road trip to Canberra. We landed at a member's house for a bit of a craft and chat session, and the very first thing Rachel did was to go into her craft room, grab some stamps which had clearly never been inked up, and immediately ink and stamp them all. Her motto was that stamps are to be used and loved, and now that I have more time for crafting, I'm going to embrace my inner rage and make sure every stamp set gets a chance to shine. Now, once I finished stamping the A5 white cardstock panel, I trimmed about 3mm off each edge so that there would be a fine border around the panel. You could, of course, do this before you start your stamping. The first time I made this card, I stamped directly onto the card front, but it really needed a border. So I pulled out this old stamping hack and swiped the ink pad directly onto the card base front around each edge. This is a great move when you don't have the right shade of cardstock or if you don't want the front of your card to be too heavy. I also inked lightly around the border of the stamp panel with a blending brush to give it a bit of depth, then really draw the eye to the brightness in the center of the card. I started by using the leftover ink on my glass mat, then picked up directly from the ink pad, making sure to tap off the excess first. This gives a nice, smooth inked edge without blotchy ink drag marks. Then I added some double-sided tape and a little liquid glue to give it a little bit of wriggle room and adhered the panel to the center of the card front. For my original card, I used a digital stamp that was already coloured, but I only had one, so I reprinted the stamp and coloured it again. All up, it took about 12 minutes, but I've condensed the colouring process down to about 24 seconds for you, because I am a slow colourist, and even I got bored watching it back. And as it was World Fussy Cutting Day when I recorded this, I've left the fussy cutting in as a tribute to fine-tipped scissors everywhere. When fussy cutting, I like to move the stamped image as I cut rather than moving the scissors, as it seems to give me a better result. I've also left a white outline around the edge, giving it a faux die cut look, because there was absolutely no way I was cutting to the line on those skinny bird legs. I played with the idea of placing the bird onto a mat, but in a very Undawn-like move, I decided to go for a grounding shadow instead. Now, this is an old die set by My Favourite Things called Grounding Shadows, which I ran through my die cut machine off screen, but you absolutely could just hand cut a piece of cardstock to make your grounding shadow. Then all that was left to do was add the bird, and I felt that some foam dots would give a natural drop shadow, helping the pirate birdie stand out on that busy background. Once the bird was added, I realised I didn't need a sentiment because the background says it all. My daughter stayed and watched me complete the card, which took about 15 minutes, and now she has a comprehensive understanding of cling foam that she never knew she needed. So there you have it, a card I made using things that I just had on hand. I will list the supplies that I used in the description box, but chances are some of them have been long retired. That said, you absolutely could make this card using products you have in your own craft stash. For example, if you don't have a long sentiment strip like this, you could just line up and stamp individual sentiments that work with your theme. Alternatively, you could use any border or long stamp, or even line up a bunch of images to make your repetitive border background. And while I used a digital stamp that's been Copic coloured, you could use any colouring method you like. And if you're not into stamping and colouring, you could use a die cut that you've assembled or even a pre-coloured die cut that you've purchased. Now, I chose my feature image based off my Sweary Affirmations background, but you could work in reverse and choose a background that complements your featured image. I hope you enjoyed this Use What You Have episode and that you'll give repetition a try in your next project. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.